and he's going to house it.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home. It's race day, Brian. We are in Kansas. It is time for the AdventHealth 400. We have a little bit of potential rain that we'll have to deal with, so we can figure that part out. But we are recording on race day, giving us the most information. If you guys like seeing this in your feed at this time, please let us know. We're trying to figure out a time that works best. It's for both Brian and I and for the viewer. You make sure you guys actually get the content you want and get all the information you need prior to the race. But first, before we dive into everything, how's it going, Brian Twining?
Going well, my friend. As we were talking prior to recording here, we're extremely excited for this race. There's been some pretty significant movement on the odds board, and DK is going to be really interesting with a few guys starting at the back. Couple of guys not qualifying very well, and Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick. This is going to be an interesting race.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff we got to talk about, especially from the DK perspective.
Oh, yeah.
And as you mentioned, your guy Christopher Bell, we talked about it prior to qualifying.
That's right.
That 22-1 number has been absolutely obliterated. So hopefully you're checking out each of our shows on Thursday morning. We talk about some of the early lines we're jumping at, some of the early ones we're getting on. If you haven't done so, please consider hitting subscribe. Hit the thumbs up if you're enjoying the episode. If we get to 500 subs before the NASCAR playoff, I will be giving away a Christopher Bell signed mini helmet to one lucky viewer of the show. We'll do a little giveaway once that happens. So help us get to 500. Tell your friends, tell your family, anybody you know that likes NASCAR content, likes betting content, send them our way. We will appreciate it very much. A little click on your part, a little word here, takes 10 seconds out of your day and really does do a lot for us. So please, please, please share the show around. Tell people to check it out, all that good stuff. With that being said, Brian, let's dive in. Let's talk some of that DFS because we have some names, we have some values, and we have some craziness. So we'll start, as we always do, kind of in the upper tier. We only have one 11K driver, so I'll lump him in with the 10K guys, as we only have three of those guys as well. So we have Kyle Larson 11-1. Obviously we talked on Wednesday, but dominant at this track, qualified really well, going to be really popular and probably deserves to be. Chase Elliott starting 14th, Martin Truex starting 9th, and as you mentioned, Denny Hamlin qualified 18th. I could see him being a very popular option as well. What's your thoughts kind of on this range based on, where we're at?
It's really hard to gauge what this track is going to look like today when you take into account with the new car. Like, obviously, if this was last year, Kyle Larson would have to be in your lineup starting third, knowing he was probably going to finish first in this race as he dominated 1.5s last season. But with what we've seen throughout this year, you almost have to throw all of that out the window and kind of look at who do you think is going to have the better potential to move up, and without the largest amount of risk. So in this group here of those guys, like Elliott starting 14th, I mean, he's probably the best value there just because he's had the least amount of issues of those four. With Denny Hamlin, he seemingly can't put together an entire race. So I feel like Elliott would probably be the move for me anyways.
In terms of ownership, he's going to be one of the lower ones based on projections that I'm seeing right now. So if you want to, I think if you're looking to get off of ownership or be a little bit different, I think there's two moves. I think if you're going to attack this range, Chase Elliott is the name to target. Or the other thing is you just cross all four of these guys off and jump kind of to that next chunk and start building from there. Obviously, there's a lot of risk. Kyle Larson could easily dominate this race for the jump, be the right driver you need in order to cash. And you're kind of just eliminating yourself off the jump. But as we saw last week, Kyle Larson looked like the dominant option, the one you needed. And before the end of the race, he was, parked in the garage. So taking out about half of the field. So if you're playing tournaments and you want to mix it up, I think fading Kyle Larson isn't the craziest thing. As you mentioned, Hamlin also going to be pretty popular. But absolutely, is somebody that if you're building lineups, I think he's worth your time. And maybe you build some with Larson, build some with Hamlin, build some without. You don't have to go with the $1,000 entry on all of them. You can build 3 or 4 lineups, mix it up a little bit. Do you, and then figure it out from there. But I think that is kind of my initial leans here at the top. Let's dive into the 9K range, because I think that's where a lot of the interesting names. Your guy William Byron's there, 9.9, starting 13th. I think makes a ton of sense. Kyle Busch, I obviously like this week. I think he can perform well, and I'm happy I locked in my bets as I did, as he's starting 6th. Our guy Ross Chastain starting 11th. I know you don't like him. I know after last week it's going to be a little bit of a struggle bus, but Joey Logano starting 34th at 9,600, I think is going to be a must play in a lot of lineups. And projected ownership has him about 40%. I could see him like last week with Kevin Harvick, where it's closer to like 50, 60, 70% in some contests.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So like Logano starting near the back of the field, I feel like his ownership percentage is gonna be way too high for me anyways, especially if you're playing in a GPP and I like to do one lineup. So I feel like I'd be fading him in my lineup just because there's no variance in the difference of my lineup and everyone else there. Honestly, of that group, I think my favorite guy up in that 9K and up range has got to be William Byron starting 13th.
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking at somebody who probably could have won last week, would have been his 3rd win on the year. He's been fast at every track he's ran. He's top 10, I think, in 4 or 5 consecutive trips to Kansas. He's driving extremely well right now, starting 13th. You're going to get those placement points for somebody that's potentially going to finish inside the top 5, and you're saving all that salary.
Yep.
Like in that top 2 ranges, I think Byron is my favorite.
Yeah, I think Byron is an incredible option. Obviously, somebody that when we go to build our lineups, I have a feeling we'll find a seat in one of the 6 slots. But it is interesting. You're gonna have, like we talked about with the 10K guys, you're gonna have to pick your poison, right? So yes, you can go to Hamlin, but maybe that means fading Logano, or maybe you do Hamlin and Logano, but then maybe fade Larson, or you have to pick.
Yeah.
You have to figure out where you're going to get off a little bit of the chalk. You don't have to fade it all. You don't have to cross off anybody who's going to be popular. But it's just eliminating the right popular drivers. So building
I think it's interesting too. Ross the Boss starting 11th. This is a guy who's routinely finishing inside the top 5 at 9,700 is probably a great value play too.
Yeah, totally. And we've seen him pop on a lot of different track styles. He could absolutely win this week.
Yep.
Easily contend for even as the top 5, starting 11th, lead some laps, dominate. He could absolutely be a tremendous value at 9,700. We'll dip into the 8K range and look at some of the options. Tyler Reddick qualified really well, starting 2nd, 8,900 could be an interesting way if you want to pivot off of Larson. Kevin Harvick starting 23rd, I think is going to be popular again this week. Just a driver that we've talked about him in the past few weeks, but it's just he's a lot more competitive than he was last year, where we were really like, oh, okay, well, he'll be fine, but he'll be a top 5, top 10 type guy, not a guy who can actually win. And at this point, he's proving to be a really solid option, kind of in the twilight years of his career. So starting 23rd, 8,700, I could see him being popular. Your boy Christopher Bell, 8,400, starting on the pole. Could dominate some laps, could have a chance to win. But I mean, with all the names that are around it, I think it's gonna be hard for most people to get there. Austin Dillon starting 21st is the end of that 8K range. So in that 8K range, where's your head going? What are your thoughts?
I think initially, for me, I'm gonna stick to my guns with Austin Dillon. He was fast. He was really fast in practice. Qualifying didn't go over well, but at 8K, starting 21st, he's gonna be. I mean, I don't know what the projections say, but I would assume his ownership is gonna be well below that of Kevin Harvick, starting just 2 spots behind him. So I feel like of those 4 guys, he's probably the best value with the biggest potential to boom in your lineup and give you a benefit over everyone else. So I think Dylan for me is probably my favorite right there.
Yeah, so right now, ownership is saying about 15% for Dylan and 18% for Harvick, which I think is
Huh.
lower than I'm expecting it to be, but I guess we'll have to see. Between Christopher Bell and Tyler Reddick, I mean, obviously you're the Christopher Bell stan, but if you're building a lineup today, are you just going to go with Bell, who's starting first, or are you going to take Tyler Reddick?
Man, that's so difficult, but I gotta say, from watching practice and qualifying, I feel like if Bell can run like either the first or second lap like he did in qualifying, where he was just able to keep the throttle down almost entirely
Yeah.
throughout turns 3 and 4, he can pull out to the lead. And like we talked about last week, just like why we went with Joey Logano, clean air is king in these new cars, especially at these 1.5s.
Yep.
So I think if he can jump out to an early lead, maybe he cruises to a stage 1 victory, and then
Yep.
you're just basically happy with all those laps led and fastest laps from the get-go.
Yep.
And then as long as he finishes inside the top 10, you're probably sitting pretty at that 8,400 cost.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Yeah, you want him to dominate stage 1, maybe even part of stage 2, finish somewhere in that 5 to 10 range at worst, and just be super strong. And then you find a second car to kind of be the late race dominator and kind of fill out your lineup. This is going to be a really interesting range. I think there's going to be a lot of
Yes.
potential here. I mean, we'll start as high as Chase Briscoe at 7,900, starting 12th. We'll go all the way to 6K because there's a ton of options in here. I think the ones that are going to jump out for a lot of people are both Ricky Stenhouse Jr. starting 36th and our guy Chris Buescher starting 35th, both sub 7K. They're both going to be very popular this week, but I think for the right reasons, for good reasons.
Yeah.
Could be an interesting way though if you go with these two guys and instead of going with Logano. Some of the ownership could filter that way, or maybe you go with Logano knowing that these guys are easier to squeeze into lineups, and fitting Logano into your lineup at 9,600 is going to be a little bit more of a challenge. But as we dip into this range, what names are jumping off the page to you?
First and foremost, it's got to be Chris Buescher, starting 35th.
Yeah.
He's ran pretty well at Kansas. He's been running a lot faster over the last 4 or 5 races this year. He was pretty quick in practice. I think he had the 9th fastest speed, obviously, or before crashing, so he couldn't qualify. The RFK team, outside of Brad Keselowski spinning himself out, has been better of late. Even when Keselowski's been on track, he's been faster than he showed early on in the season. So I think they're kind of turning it around.
Yep.
So Buescher for me, 6,700, starting 35th. That's probably one of the first entries on any lineup that I'm building, to be honest with you.
I think that makes sense.
Regardless of his ownership percentage.
Yeah, but like we keep talking about, it's not about, you don't have to fade everybody. You just fade the right drivers. And pick and choose your spots, because you're going to have to take on some ownership, and you're going to want to take on some ownership.
Yeah.
Because they're popular for a reason. They're going to be valuable drivers. In some cases, they're going to be drivers that you need to have. We talked a little bit about him, but Bubba Wallace starting 24th, I think could be an interesting pivot, kind of in this range, 6,400. Obviously, he's not starting, in the mid 30s, but still starting far back enough, could have a nice enough performance at 6,400, could be a little way to get off of a little bit of ownership and still have a really solid race and produce for your DraftKings lineups.
Yeah, Bubba's another guy who the results aren't necessarily there, but we talked about this last week with him. He's been running a lot better, more consistently, and he's pretty consistently been near the top 10 at every single race this year. And it's just whether or not it's getting caught up in last week's accordion effect crash or somebody clipping him or maybe a pit incident, but he's been running so much better that he's probably more of like a mid-teens driver now, not necessarily a low teens or low 20s finisher. So you're getting value at 6,400 for somebody who's probably going to finish inside the top 20.
Yep, I like that call quite a bit. Kurt Busch, shouts to him for his paint scheme this week.
Yes.
His paint scheme is one of the coolest ones as somebody who,
Anybody who is around our age,
yeah,
anybody who's like 30 to 45 is probably just drooling over the fact that he gets to drive a car with the Jumpman on it.
yeah, that paint scheme for people that collect Jordans is just
Yeah.
pristine. Could not have done a better job. As far as the like value plays, as we dive kind of into that below 6K range, is there anybody that is garnering your attention as somebody who could um, be a
Not
usable option?
Yeah, not absolutely blow up your thing. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, the only couple names that I would even consider throwing into my lineup based on their starting position and what I think their potential is got to be Gilliland and
Yep.
probably Noah Gragson, even
Yep.
over Harrison Burton. I feel like those two could potentially surprise and sneak inside the top 20, but when you're getting below that 6K range, especially this week, you're running into some issues with guys like LaJoy and Ty Dillon starting 20th or above. That is
Yeah.
not a good sign for what kind of value you're going to get out of them.
Yeah. I think you nailed it. I think Gregson, I think Burton, and Gilliland are probably the names, especially because of where they're starting. Michael McDowell, actually, I don't hate starting 25th. I think he could be fine. But yeah, getting to LaJoy or Dillon is going to be tough. But they're all within that same range and they have a similar outcome, but don't have nearly the same ownership. So if you're building a few lineups, it might be worthwhile to kind of mix and match these guys in the back end of your lineups, um, because we've seen each and every week with these guys that sometimes they finish the race, sometimes they
Yeah.
don't, sometimes they're 3 laps down, sometimes they have issues, sometimes they finish in the top 10, like nobody, like top 5, like Justin Haley. So mix and match, find your options. If you have a guy you really like, obviously you can go a little overweight if depending on how many lineups you're building. But I think not getting too ahead of your skis on any of these guys is probably the move. Brian, we built 2 lineups last week and had a pretty successful week with one of them. So I guess let's build one, and if we have strong feelings like that, we could pivot off of it and build another one. Then maybe we'll do that. But let's start with one and kind of get it going. So I'll let you take the tee box here, and you can pick your favorite driver to pencil in.
All right, we're gonna lead it off with a guy I picked to win, and Christopher Bell. I think he's got to be
Okay.
the beginning of the lineup here. I feel like his ownership is going to be low enough to where you're kind of going against the grain for
Yep.
somebody that could dominate.
Okay. We're crossing them off. If we're gonna be a little unique there, we're gonna be a little chalky here. Joey Logano, starting
Yeah.
34th, 9,600. Have to do it.
Okay, we're at 8,000.
So we have a lot of stuff we can do. Obviously, a second dominator could make some sense. Um,
I feel like I'm gonna go slightly against the grain here. No. Give me William Byron, starting 13th,
okay.
9,900. I think he too could potentially move up into the front of the pack quite early.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Obviously, hopefully they can not fight in the garage while we're getting this team together, but that's okay.
Well, according to
Um,
Joey Logano yesterday, he feels that the incident is over with because his nudging of William Byron was the end of the confrontation to
mm.
him.
But he did say
So,
if Byron wants to keep it going, he'll make it worse each time, which I'm not
yeah.
really sure what that means, but Joey Logano really has these threats that he likes to hand out without a whole lot of backup. Okay, so I think I think we kind of now it's time to jump into that kind of
Yeah.
6K range like we were talking about. The question is, um, Christopher Bell, William Byron, Joey Logano. I could see all them having decent ownership. So I don't know that like we want to get to Ricky Stenhouse, although his ceiling is pretty dang high. Chris
And he's
Buescher
driving a sick paint scheme.
Chris Buescher is also interesting. Um, we could also look at someone like Kevin Harvick, who I really like this week, or even Eric Jones. who is $1,000 cheaper. That could be interesting. But let's do. Let's talk some Noah Gragson, 5,500. I want to get some of the cheaper guys in there to see how much flexibility we could potentially have and kind of figure it out from there. But I think Gregson started 28th, 5,500, can finish kind of maybe in that top 20-ish range, have a decent race, and not absolutely murder your lineups. And at 5,500, I think is very easily fit into almost any lineup.
I like that. All right. So piggybacking off of that to kind of save some salary here, I think we're going to go to Bubba over Chris Buescher.
Okay. I like it.
Starting 24th.
I like it a lot. So now we have, I mean, we could do whatever we want pretty much. We can go, I mean, Hamlin at 18th is a no-brainer, but he's also filling out all of our salary. So, the potential of overlap is definitely there, but I at the same time, I'm not going to dip down to someone else.
I don't necessarily think he would be a good addition to this lineup because then you'd be stacked with the two big Penske guys. But Ryan Blaney starting 10th at 9,100 seems like he could go a little overlooked this week at a track where he's not necessarily been the best. But I mean, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, you kind of throw away a lot of the previous year's results here, and Blaney has been one of the best drivers in the Cup Series this season overall. So
you know what? I think that's a fantastic call, and I think he is going to be the final driver going in. Obviously, it's going to let us leave a little salary on the table. I think he, in terms of potential, could absolutely win this race. I think he could be that second dominator that we're looking for. So we just need either him or Byron to really pop up kind of near stage 2 and potentially fight with Christopher Bell for the lead of the race. Potentially all three of them, are in that top 5 conversation. I think that's a fantastic call. A guy that, as you mentioned, could be severely overlooked this week and be a name that you really need. Like, even if you want to pivot off of Byron and go down to Blaney.
Yeah.
And then use that salary to, you could put in Chase Elliott, you could put in Martin Truex, you could put in Denny Hamlin. Like, there's a lot you could do. So I think that's a fantastic call and a good potential pivot opportunity at his price and where he's starting. I think it makes a lot of sense. That's a really good call.
Yeah, like, I mean, Blaney, for instance, last year's 2 results were pretty bad, 21st and 37, but he qualified 7th and 2nd in both of those races. So obviously he has the speed. It's just some sort of incident during the race that's causing that. And then the fall race in 2020, he finished 7th. So he's shown the ability here. It's just whether or not he can put together an entire race, which has been the story for him, Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, a lot of guys this year. But I mean, he's going to pop eventually, you would think.
So let's look at where we're at right now, and we can kind of get people up to date on what our betting card currently looks like, and then where we're going from there. So I have three outrights. I have Kyle Busch at 8-1. I have Denny Hamlin at 9-1, and Ross Chastain at 10. I also have Kyle Busch to top 5, Alex Bowman to top 5, Kevin Harvick to top 5, Kevin Harvick to top 10, Eric Jones to top 10. Alex Bowman to top 10. You can see a pattern here. Austin Dillon to top 10. Kyle Larson to top 5. And our show bet this week is Ross Chastain versus William Byron. Brian is on Byron. I'm on Chastain. You can see Brian's card. Austin Dillon, 80-1. Christopher Bell at 22-1. Keep that in mind for when we look at the odds here in a second. Harvick, 18. Alex Bowman, 16. Tyler Reddick, 16. Reddick top 10, Dillon top 10, Christopher Bell top 10, which that's going to feel like a freaking value at this point. Austin Dillon top 5. So we just want to let you know where our cards are currently at, and then obviously we'll give you ideas based on current odds, what we would do and where our heads are at, because obviously, as we flip over and you can see, Christopher Bell is somewhere between 7 and 9-1, and Brian has it at 22.
Ridiculous.
So at 22, Christopher Bell is absolutely a bet. Brian Twining at 7 or 8 or 9.
No. Before you even finish the question,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. See, like at 7-1, if you're saying I can get Christopher Bell or Kyle Larson,
Yeah,
even at
exactly.
7.5 to 1, 9 to
Yeah.
1, like give me Kyle Larson all day. What are
Well,
we
not
doing?
just that, like, Christopher Bell, and no offense to Tyler Reddick, I have both of those guys on an outright this week, which both of them are tremendous values, like more than double the value, but they haven't shown the ability to finish off a race. So at these odds, I'm skipping immediately over those guys and going directly to Ross Chastain
Yeah.
at 10 to 1, who's won twice. He's finished inside the top 5 in 7 of the 8 races that he hasn't crashed this year, which how effing ridiculous is that? Um, at 10 to 1, he's way better value than those two.
Yeah, and like I bet Chastain at 10 to 1 before qualifying. He's still floating around that number. I would very obviously still be fine betting him there. And
Yeah,
yeah, as
exactly.
you mentioned, like I would rather bet him than Reddick or than bet Christopher Bell. I am happy. While it's not a huge move, I have Kyle Busch 8 to 1, and he's now 7.5 to 1. So, a little bit of value there. I will take that. Larson is really tempting me at that 7 to 1 number to put it on the card, but
I gotta say, being that last week I thought was gonna be one of the only times we saw Larson above that 5.5
yeah,
number, seeing him at 7 is very intriguing.
especially at a track where he's been so dominant. If it was like a
Yeah.
track where he's been kind of, then I would make a little more sense, or like a super speedway where there's a
He's
little more variance.
he's almost like the hedge of all of your other outrights this week. It's
Yeah.
like you do like a double unit bet on Larson to win with all of your low unit wagers on the
Yep.
big odds guys.
Especially when you have Christopher
22.
Bell at 20 something, and you maybe
Yeah.
take Eric Jones or Austin Dillon or
Yeah.
some of those guys. Let's keep crawling down. Hamlin at 12. I still think he's a good value this week. I know, I got him at 9. I probably won't double down at 12, but I think it's a fine bet. Even Chase Elliott at 12, he's somebody that's been good. And then aforementioned Ryan Blaney, we talked about at the end of the DFS segment, 12 to 1 for guys starting 10th. The track history is not amazing, but as Brian said, he's been one of the best drivers, one of the most consistent drivers. Obviously, something happens usually in stage 3, whether it's coming out of the pit or just some little malfunction that kind of
Yeah.
derails his day, but he's going to get in victory lane sooner than later. He's been a really strong driver. He qualified fine enough. He's looked fast. Getting him at kind of 12 to 1, I think I would be fine with. Even 10 to 1 is okay. But if I can get it at 12, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, no, Blaney, and then the other guy who I am adding to the card, William Byron at 12 to 1. I feel like those numbers they're
Yeah.
kind of the best value you're going to get on them in a post qualifying time. Like
Yep.
the majority of the time, both of these guys are probably seeing their odds shrink inside that 10 to 1 number of late. So getting them above there at a track that, yeah, maybe they haven't won, but they've ran really well at in previous times, I think is too much value to pass up. And it's kind of the technique in NASCAR. Like you got to pepper the board in order to win. Otherwise you're going, if you're picking one guy, like you're praying to all of the sports gods that happens.
Yeah, and I feel like this year especially, it's been a lot more open. Like in previous years, it was like,
Yeah.
okay, you bet Kyle Busch,
Kyle Larson.
Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, or like Chase Elliott, and like they're all like 3 to
Yeah.
1, or Denny Hamlin, and then everyone else is like 25 or lower. And now it's a lot more, differentiate, and obviously other drivers have just taken a step forward too.
Yeah.
Bowman at 14, I'm fine with. Brian got it at 16. I like that number obviously better. I think 12 is a little too short. At 12, I would consider Blaney or Byron.
Oh yeah. Even
Uh,
Truex, like we didn't even
yeah,
mention him, but I mean he's a guy he's been fine this year.
yeah. I'm
But
just wondering if he's a little more Kevin Harvick of last year, though, where he's more of a top 5
possible.
guy
Yeah.
than an outright winner. But I'll pick him to win a few more races, I'm sure, and we'll see how that looks. Kurt Busch, not touching him at 20 to 1. Joey
Yeah.
Logano, probably not touching him at 20 to 1. I find it hard to see him going to win back-to-back races, starting 34th. Like, I think he can get through the field and be a tremendous value for DraftKings.
Well,
but I don't know that he's gonna win.
And then also, real quick, I did want to hit on this. I know it doesn't apply as much to this year as it has in the past, but 8 of the last 10 winners at Kansas all started the race inside the top 10.
Okay.
And so this year, though, however, with the next gen car, I think it's something like 6 of the 10 winners or something have all started outside the top 10.
Interesting.
So, I mean, you're kind of weighing what is having a bigger effect on these races. Is it past performance? Is it the new car? I mean, is it just elevated games or elevated driving skills of some of these guys? But that's why, like, Logano starting near the back of the field, it's almost a non-starter for an outright in recent years. Like the lowest position to win here in the last, since they started racing here, is 25th.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
yeah, it's a good point. Kevin Harvick at 50 is really appealing.
Okay, so I wanted to hit on Harvick. I don't know if everyone watched practice and qualifying. I'm kind of a loser, and I sat there and I've thoroughly enjoyed watching practice and qualifying. I can't get enough of NASCAR now. Who would have ever guessed it? But Harvick, to me, almost seemed like he was more feeling out the car, as opposed to necessarily trying to pull the fastest laps, because he was running a bunch of different lines in practice. Even in qualifying, you could tell he was almost feeling out the high line as opposed to just trying to run the fastest lap. So grabbing him at 50-1, I mean, who knows? This is a guy who could pop. He's won here before. So
yeah, I mean, I already have a top 5. I have top 10 as my best bet. I'm gonna add him to the card because I am a glutton for punishment. At 50, I just think that's a good number. I'm only gonna put a little bit on it, but I just, at 50-1, it's a good number. I haven't taken any longer shots yet this week, so I think that's a good place to start. And no way am I touching 28, but at 50
no.
or even 48, I'd be fine. 35, I'm not touching. I would need at least 40.
I mean, I already have an outright half a unit on Harvick at 18-1. So I'm going to add this 50-1 at a quarter unit. I mean, I'm not going to make it a full unit on it, but just getting that 50-1 number, I mean, that is incredible.
Yeah, it's definitely a number. It's definitely a number. And like we talked about on Wednesday, like, they're not all going to hit and they're not all going to work, but he can win one out of every 50 times. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, exactly.
This range is kind of interesting. Briscoe at 40, I think is a decent play. We talked a little bit Eric Jones on Wednesday. His number's not terrible either. Your guy Austin Dillon, I think you got him at 80.
Yep.
Yeah, so now 50, 60, that means just having that in your pocket is a move. And then we love seeing Brad Keselowski down here at 100.
That's incredible.
And his odds of spinning out and or spinning somebody out are probably like -1,000.
Every week now. It's a thing.
So yeah, I think at this point we're just looking at names, so that's fine. Let's look at the top 10 market and see if we can't find some interesting numbers. Let's go here, go top 10. No, there. Let's close that. Perfect. Okay, so top 10 market.
Look at those Tyler Reddick and Christopher Bell numbers now.
Jesus. You got it at plus 130, now it's minus 225.
Yep.
That's value, my friend. They're like the difference between like Austin Dillon going from 80-1 to 60-1 versus Christopher Bell going from plus 130 to minus 225. Like, Bell is such a better value.
Well, and we talked about it on Thursday. You knew that those odds were going to shrink, being that Christopher Bell had qualified inside the top 10 pretty much every single week since Las Vegas. So the fact that we're able to grab that number at plus money, to me, was it was almost as if the books are still basing him off of preseason pricing as opposed to what he's actually racing like on the track. So, I mean, as long as they're going to continue to do that, I'm going to continue to bet it. Whether it hits or not, that's not necessarily the case.
And as we talked about, it'd be nice if there was some sort of little prop swap set up where we could Or we could
Exactly.
buy Christopher Bell before qualifying, have him qualify well, and then sell those tickets off before the race
Exactly.
day.
I sell it back to the book for like half what the price is. I
Yeah,
mean,
I think that would be a fun way to have a little weekly Christopher Bell profit, because
yeah, seriously.
qualify is amazing, looks good when there's no cars on the track, but much
Yeah.
like we talked about with Ryan Blaney, things just kind of get off the rails when it matters most. And part of the reason I think they hang those numbers, because at the end of the day on Sunday, they're like, oh, yeah, I mean, he got 6, whatever. We can hang a bigger number. But then he qualifies well, and then they have to, like,
Yep.
limit their exposure and all that stuff. So, yeah, a lot of interesting numbers in this range. Obviously, big names, guys that qualified well. Um, Alex Bowman, I still like. I think that's not a terrible number. Um,
As much as I hate him, I don't hate Joey Logano at -120 at FanDuel to top 10.
yeah, it's a top
It's
10. That's
it's a
probably,
decent number.
yeah. I'm gonna add that.
I mean, I can put my hatred aside for betting odds
Yeah,
here.
and you're not
Like
asking him to win. You're just asking him to get in the
exactly.
top 10.
Yeah, you just finish in the top 10 and finish behind Ryan Blaney, so that way I can continue to.
Exactly. Yeah, Brian Blaney can get 9th. He can get 10th. Everything's good. Um,
Okay, and then so there's one I added already. I'm gonna add Kevin Harvick top 10 at +105 from FanDuel. I know Kyle did best bet earlier in the week at a little bit shorter odds. I think it was like -115, -120.
-120. Yeah.
Yeah, so getting him at plus money, very similar to Logano. That then the odds are what's forcing the bet here. Like Kevin Harvick has been a consistent top 10 finisher at this track, and I think he's going to do it again, regardless of where he's starting.
Yep, and I'm adding it to my card as well, because if I'm gonna go down, I'm gonna go down like the Titanic, hit an iceberg. But I think I'm gonna have a chance to have Kevin Harvick build that bankroll back up this
Yep.
week with a nice
Yeah.
performance. Once again, just want him to top 10. Don't need him to win the race. Yeah, so you got Austin Dillon to top 10 at 2-1.
2-1.
Right now,
Yep.
you can supposedly get it at 165. I'm not sure if the BetMGM numbers have been updated. It's been a little wonky, but yeah, I mean, plus 125, 130. That's tremendous value. So,
I'm pretty sure on Bovada though, you could still get him at 2-1. So if you have offshore,
our favorite offshore just loves to hang numbers.
yeah,
Sometimes they're
go
real
ahead,
short. Sometimes
go
they're real
and go
nice.
smash those because there's no that's way better value than any of the actual books.
Chris Buescher top 10. Bubba
I mean,
Wallace.
I like both of those at 325.
Yeah.
We talk about this all the time. A top 10 is you're finishing in basically the top quarter of the field,
Yeah.
essentially. I mean,
And
anybody
especially
can do
this
that.
year where like people have like you were talking about,
Exactly.
there's tire issue already in qualifying and practice. There's there's accidents, there's all kinds of stuff that happens, and you just snug up right inside the right pocket, and the wreck happens around you. You've cruised through, and all of a sudden you're getting 9th and cashing that ticket. And when you're telling me 3-1 is the number, like that's a good number to get on. So yeah, I'm with you a lot. Like these two guys I think are not terrible. Even Justin Haley, I'd be fine with it. Plus 325.
Wow, look at that Noah Gragson number.
7-1.
7-1?
Woo.
That's
Woo. If I
ridiculous.
could find a top 20 bet on him, I might do that. Let's see if they have it.
I'm so sad that they dumped those.
Yeah, they used that. I mean, that was, here's top 20. Let's see what they have.
So
No top 20s.
it doesn't look like BetMGM has any placements up. As
Yeah.
I'm on BetMGM Arizona, but
That was kind of my assumption based on those numbers.
yeah.
I'm always, when it's off that much, I'm always a little dubious. And as we checked last week, some of the lines were correct. Like we were looking at was it Caesars? I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it was Caesars.
So they sometimes hang the numbers, and you can find value. This is the top 5 market. I'm just seeing if there's anything screaming our name. Tyler Reddick, man, those numbers are short. It's crazy. Ross Chastain. I don't think there's anything worthwhile. Alex Bowman at 2-1 to top 5. What did I get him? Yeah, that's what I got him at. So I wouldn't fault anybody who went to that.
Top
Alex,
fives, yeah, but the top threes and the top fives are just so difficult because, like
Yeah.
we saw with Byron last week, he's running first.
Yep.
He gets bumped by Logano, and he winds up finishing outside the top 10. I mean,
Yeah. As somebody who's had all kinds of issues with guys finishing the race where they're supposed to, Allmendinger getting pushed out of the way, who should have had
Yep.
an easy top 3. And I think that's part of the reason why they're priced accordingly. But I mean, but if you like a guy to win the race, taking a top 5 is oftentimes a good way to kind of hedge a little bit. That way, if they get second instead of winning, you're at least making some money back and not getting absolutely obliterated. Let's flip over to DraftKings, look at some of the featured matchups to see if there's any head-to-heads that jump out to us that could provide some serious value. This is obviously juiced based on starting position.
Yeah.
How's our head-to-head looking? Ooh, Stenhouse plus 115 against Daniel Suarez. That is going on the card. Plus money for 2 fine drivers. Obviously, our boys Ricky Spinouts likes to end up on the side of the road, but we're making bets on him. In DK, we expect him to perform well, and I'm getting plus money on him. I will take that head to head. Alex Bowman over Tyler Reddick, I think, is interesting too. I'm going to do that as well.
No chance.
I mean, Reddick's been great, so maybe I'm an idiot for taking that, but I when I see plus value on a driver that I believe in, that I've already placed a top 5 wager on, top 10 wager on, I think he could be well. Here's the 2 guys that we kind of were looking at going head to head. It's interesting.
Honestly,
combo.
and then we already passed it, but I'm going back up a little bit, and I'm going to take Chase Elliott at even money to finish ahead of Kyle Busch. I know Busch qualified a little bit better, but anytime you can get Chase Elliott against a guy who's at this stage of their careers, I would say that Elliott is probably the better of the two.
Yeah.
So you're getting even money on this. You don't necessarily, or you don't always get to get, plus money on driver matchups, especially for somebody of Chase Elliott's skill. So
yeah,
it's a value bet on my bet.
100%. If you see a driver that you think is one of the elite drivers and can win almost any race, and you get plus value on them, especially in NASCAR, tires go off. Denny Hamlin is dominating the race, and his pit crew can't get the tire back on the car. All of a sudden, he's in the back of the field. And then random guy spins out and collects whatever driver. Taking shots on some of these guys is not crazy when you're getting that good of value on a driver that you believe in. Now, if you go down here and you don't trust Eric Jones to finish the race, which what he's shown us that gets very possible, then obviously you don't jump on that.
We've seen that far too many times.
Denny Hamlin at plus 100 against Kyle Busch, then it's just a proposition on Kyle Busch not finishing the race, which we've seen happen as early as 2 weeks ago, last week, whenever he parked his car in the garage. So I think that's just in terms of betting, is actually probably the better option. We should just look at the odds Sunday morning, find the values, make that our betting card, and I bet we'll be doing a lot better.
Probably, yeah.
All right, Brian Twining. We did some DFS. We did some betting. We found some values, some potential home run hits. What is your best bet? Obviously, recap your best bet from Thursday, and then what is your best bet for here on Sunday morning?
Yeah, so going back to Thursday, my best bet was Austin Dillon to top 10 at 2-1, which if you have access to the offshore of our liking, that of Bovada, go bet that now. It's down to 135 or so. Today It was the last one I just added. I got to do it. Chase Elliott over Kyle Busch at even money. It just makes too much sense. They're only starting like 8 spots apart from each other. Elliott is, in regards to current NASCAR drivers, probably a top 5 in the series. So getting Chase Elliott at even money to finish ahead of anybody is too good to be true. So Elliott over Kyle Busch at even money is my best bet as we sit here a couple hours before race day.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. And it's, just need Kyle Busch to finish behind Chase Elliott. It could be, 23rd and 24th. It could be first and second. Doesn't really matter. Figure it out. I'm just confirming a number really quick to make sure I have it correct. Let's go to top 10 market. Let's go to, that's bad. Let's go to here and let's go.
No. I have a feeling.
Do you? I don't think you're thinking what I'm thinking. Oh man, that number's not good enough. I wanted to do Alex Bowman, but I'm not gonna give you a minus 155. I wanted it to be closer to what I got it at, but I got it at minus 135. So if you can get it closer to there, I think it's fine. I'll do the head-to-head. I'll take Alex Bowman over Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick's been good, and I might regret this, but I do believe in Alex Bowman this week. I think he has a really good chance, and I'm getting plus money on a driver that I believe in, a guy that I think can finish top 5. I think could win the race. Obviously, Brian is on board with it, Alex Bowman as well, having him at 16-1. But Tyler Reddick's been great, but he's had trouble finishing off the race, and had some issues. So I'm gonna go there. My best bet from earlier in the week was Kevin Harvick for a top 10. I got that at minus 120. I believe in it so much that I actually added the plus 105 that we found today. So I am all over Kevin Harvick this week. So he's surely to to be able to finish maybe stage 1 and then kind of have to sit in the garage for the rest of the race. And I'm sure have some amazing interview with Jamie about why his car didn't go so well. We'll have to keep an eye on the weather as the rain was coming into Kansas, but hopefully it seemed to be like it was going to be clear by race time. So fingers crossed. Enjoy the race this week. Cash some tickets.
Yes.
If you hit subscribe if you have not yet done so, hit the like button if you enjoyed today's episode, and let us know down in the comment who is winning the AdventHealth 400 at Kansas.
And tell us why it's Christopher Bell.
Yes, and why is it Christopher Bell? That's Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert. You guys enjoy the race, and we'll talk to you next time.